basically, I've got this giant collection which I've been hawking around like a tortoise with a shell on my back for 20 years. I did my store with it. I've been on the Antiques Roadshow, all that kind of stuff. And it just sits in my apartment. And I've been trying to, like, get it out there to all these people for years. I'm really fortunate. There's a new museum opening in India, and the guy acquired 5,000 of the Indian labels, and also has asked me to write a book on the labels. So that's a great incentive. But most institutions, including the Cooper Hewitt or whatever, are not interested because they basically kind of dismiss it as commercial art or whatever. And the fact is, it literally is the biggest collection of ethnic art ever amassed. And Claire, I don't know if you see Claire there, she's the former librarian at the Smithsonian. So she knows Textile Museum, so she knows that's true.
No, not the Smithsonian.
The Lowell.
Yeah, American Textile History Museum.
Right, part of the Smithsonian. Look,
You've elevated me.
So all this started, as a photographer, I ended up with a cheap studio, in a warehouse in Manchester in 1988. It was literally $20 a month for this place. And there was a textile merchant to the left of me who's from Lebanon. There was a warehouse opposite me that was still going, but there was just remnants left in this big old warehouse. And at some point, because I had all these kind of old desks, etc., this guy called Steve Bates walked in with a bag of these, which are these printing blocks. And he said, "Adrian, you like old things. I've got a bag of these if you want." I knew nothing about them, but I was like, "Oh, they're cool." And I said, "Where do you get them from?" He said, "Oh, there's hundreds of them just lying around. We actually put them in the boiler and, burn them for the copper. And, there's so many of them." So me being there, the timing of me being there, firstly, I was a photographer, so I did about 20 minutes of work a week, and I could scramble around these warehouse basements as they were getting renovated. And also being a creative person, I have no idea what this says, but even the grain on the wood and everything just seemed like the coolest thing. And then, you look at the dates on these things. I don't know if you can read that, but 1875.
Yeah.
It's like the coolest thing. Oh, I have to swap that. Oh, hang on. How do I set it so if you can't speak anybody or you're going to take over the screen? So it's going to be a monologue, sorry. So I ended up with these things, and I ended up scratching around all these warehouses. And how do I set it so only I stay on the screen? Sorry. Is there a way of doing that? Anyway, I could probably mute you guys, but anyway. So this is how I ended up with all the collection. And so what I want to do, because I've only got literally 25 minutes, is I want to explain how these were used. So briefly, Manchester was the first industrial city in the world. It was all based on getting raw cotton and spinning it and weaving it and printing it and converting it into fabric and selling it around the world. Now, 88% of all fabric sold in the world came from Manchester in the 1880s. Who's that making a noise in the background? Who is that? Oh, is someone on a plane? No, someone in the background. No. There you go. Flavia. All right, let's mute. There you go. So so every piece of fabric was sold like this. It wasn't sold in a roll, it was sold in a piece. So on the front of the piece, the merchant would print something to advertise it to the local buyers. So as much as people, obviously there are terrible things about the colonialism, etc., this wasn't all forced on people. They had a choice of which merchant to buy from. And so each of these merchants would try and get an image that would be appealing to a local and obviously had some kind of reference. Who's Andrea Regal?
Me.
I'm going to have to mute you, Andrea. Could you mute yourself? You keep popping into my thing. Oh, there you go. So as you can see, there's alligators, crocodiles, all these kind of things. These are really rare. Now, what happened was, obviously, these are a certain amount of yards long, but this was a sample that the merchant would have to make sure that his pieces were all stamped correctly and labeled. Now, when the customer bought this, this was water washable, would wash straight off, and so you would never lose any fabric. So, to give you an idea of the scale, in 1913, Manchester exported 4 million miles of fabric in 1 year. Now, the average length of a cotton piece was about 20 yards, so that corresponds to 250 million pieces of fabric that were folded and stamped all by hand and went all around the world. Now, one merchant, because he was trying to find things that people would find appealing, one merchant could have up to 10,000 different trademarks. So you imagine there's 800 merchants in Manchester. They were the biggest ones, but I acquired a collection of a guy that just dealt with Cuba, Mexico, and I think Nicaragua. And he had 2,500 different trademarks just for those markets. He was around for 100 years. So if you multiply all that up, you can now understand, and these were people that were dealing with cultures that, you know, as I say, all over the world, China and India, South America, South Africa. So the way it would work, you would either develop your own trademark, or you could do something like this. You could contact the printer. These are original paintings. You could contact the printer and say, hey, I'm going to deal in, you know, Africa, whatever. And do you have any trademarks that we could use, we could buy? Because they'd have artists just drawing these, employed like 40 artists full time. And they would just draw designs on spec that might, and register them, that then different merchants could use them in different markets. So you would get maybe 20 of these. You could get to pick which one. It says on the back, to whom the same must be returned after due inspection. So you would have a code number on the back. So just as a brief thing, these are the kind of paintings. All these are all original paintings, but from all over the world, basically. So you can see this then starts ballooning. And so by 1870, there were so many trademarks that when they introduced trademark registration in Manchester, in England, they had to set up a special office in Manchester, which took 10 years going through all the trademarks. And literally, there were some merchants who didn't bother registering their trademarks, but there were 180,000 different trademarks submitted to the trademark office. Now that archive is basically in storage in the National Archive, and nobody even, I mean, I found it, but it's literally listed with a code. Nobody even knows. But that is an amazing archive of images and art from all over the world. Now, tell me if I'm going too fast here. So here's a good example of a book, design book. So let me see if I can twist this. So you can see, you know, from, let me put it this way, maybe it's not going to reflect the window so much. There you go. From China, India, you know, some, to get like an image that people will remember. Some of them were kind of bizarre, like this balloon with an umbrella in between. Now, what's the coolest thing about this is there's actually invoices. Even invoices from the original artist from, there you go, that's 1908. That's a pound that he charged to design one of these labels. Now, if you imagine how many labels there were, how many artists were working at the time, and basically the designs that they would come up with, these merchants would sell them would send them images from around the world, and they would design it in the style even. You can see that's kind of like a silk painting style, in the style of the local market. Oh, there you go. There's a nice Indian cycling around the world. So some of these obviously look like, you know, kind of colonial images. So, you know, what I want to show today is a brief kind of idea of the variety of all these things. And also the fact that, so what I did was, after literally waiting 20 years, I managed to acquire the archive of this company, which is the biggest printer of these labels in Manchester. So the guy passed away, and his sons contacted me and said, "Hey, you know, we have this collection. If you're interested, there you go. This is their advertising from, I guess, I think that's like 1900, 1910 or something. So even this is how they would have promoted themselves to the merchants in China, for instance. So as I said in the mailer, this wasn't Nike or Coca-Cola using, you know, the same brand name everywhere. They would commission paintings from, for instance, this is the original painting for this. On the back it says, "The Genii was not altogether a bad-hearted fellow, and he was also much impressed by the wonderful things Pi Hang seemed able to do. So he offered to show him the nearest way to the home of the Genii at the top of Mount Sumi." So they would even serialize stories, you know, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, these kind of Chinese stories. So, and certainly, I mean, some are just, you know, decorative, but you know, maybe that would be as familiar to somebody in China as it would be to us, you know, with the Easter Bunny, you know, with Father Christmas. So one of the sad things for me is that I have no idea what most of these images are for. But I have everything, and this isn't a show-off session or anything. I'm just trying to explain what I have, because I'd love for people to come here, enjoy it. You know, obviously I print, you know, with the printing blocks still, you know, got them from all over the world. I have my store. So this is about sharing. It's not about showing off. But also it's about sort of showing to people the importance of this in the history of art and the history of branding. So let somebody else in. There you go. So, so I have all the printing blocks. I have the cloth samples. I have the invoices from the artist. I have the original artwork. I also have, this is how you would buy your packet of fabric labels. There's 1,000 of these. Now these were printed 16 color lithostone printing. So each of the colors was, each of the dots of each color was hand dotted onto a stone, and 16 of those stones had to be made for each size of label to print these things. I mean, it's crazy the amount of effort that went into them. I also have, which is, again, you know, Claire will tell you, this is like, there's the stuff that's really cool for the museums. You know, these are the original, it was a bit light, sorry. Let's move that. These are the original trademark applications. So this was somebody in 1906 who basically would say, this is the design I want to register. Oh. Abby, sorry.
Hello.
Let me just mute you. You keep jumping in. So yeah, to have these where you know who it was, the trademark was registered for. There you go. The original drawing and who it was registered for is amazing, really. So again, this is a treasure trove of research material for people. And in terms of, let's see if I can mute that. There you go. That's, better. So I'll do a Q&A bit at the end. So as well as the labels, oh, can't find a way of doing this. I also have all these as well, which are the sample books of the trademarks. So again, the typography in here, unbelievable. And again, images that, you know, may even look a bit colonial, but if you're going to upset your customer, they're never going to buy the cloth. And that would have been one of the warehouses where you can see they would get the rough cloth lengths and fold them all into these pieces. And a warehouse would basically, I remember reading, they could get 4,000 cloth pieces as rough lengths like this, folded into pieces, stamped, labeled, put in a bale, and by the river in Manchester, ready for shipping. They could do 4,000 of those in 3 hours, which is crazy. So the whole city would shake. So how are we doing on time? We've got 10 minutes left. So again, these are the registration documents for all these things. So this 1895, for instance. So it's so nice to get the customer, the types of fabric, and the name and correspondence. Of course, these are all museum quality. So I'm using white gloves, and it's all in a perfect atmosphere. And I'm glad I can't hear Claire laughing. But the fact is, all this stuff would have been thrown out, mainly, you know, apart from this main collection. So obviously I have this, which is pretty, you know, impressive enough. But really the main collection is this. So this is 60 volumes of this. So if I don't know if I can, Claire, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to unmute you. So let me just do this because it is kind of fun and I've got 8 minutes left. There you go. Are you unmuted? And there is a link at the top if you want to carry this on after another half an hour. Yeah, maybe I've got to unmute you, sorry. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Okay.
So let's do this the easy way. So give me a number from 1 to 55.
34.
34. So 34 here.
Yep.
So this is the printer's archive of all the labels that they printed for about 40 years. Now the label company was around from 1830 to 1950, but this is a small section from, some of the labels are older, but basically these range from about 1870 to 1930, but mostly around 1910. So these are the companies that are in here and their trademark that they ordered. I have no idea obviously what's in here. So you can see, it looks like South America. There's Castel Sant'Angelo.
Oh, that's Italy.
Italy, okay.
That's Rome.
You've got some kind of random looking ones. There's a giant wasp beating a kid, and 2 bears getting their revenge on a little kid who's maybe annoying them. So there's a typical random one. So Buffalo cotton mills, there you go. There's maybe one going to North America. Definitely and South American. So, I mean, come on, guys, look at that typography. That's unbelievable, right? Now, as much as they wanted to do like the giant wasp to attract people, what they also would do is use typefaces that were unique as well. So I did give a talk at TypeCon where literally I mean, obviously these were done specifically for these, but they just never seen anything like these typefaces. And labels. There we go. American Mills, Manchester. You picked a good one here, Claire. Very appropriate. Now these get like, these are really early ones. So before lithographic printing, they basically had these kind of book plate style ones, which were just single color. And what you'll find is like that elephant, you know, some of the drawings are pretty naive, as if somebody's never seen an elephant, but they have a rough idea.
Did they make anything for the United States market?
Yeah, obviously, you know, America, a lot of British people went to America and then set up their own businesses there. So that was, you know, a trade that was lost. But definitely the same thing that was used, you know, I do have American printing blocks, I do have American labels. And some of them, you know, I've managed to track the block maker from Manchester that went to Providence in Rhode Island. So definitely there was exactly the same kind of skill, the same way of doing it in America. But again, I'm guessing that because somebody wasn't there at the right time and didn't care, they all got thrown out. Like these would have been thrown out. And this is a sad thing. And you know, I don't want to, you know, name any names or whatever, but it's been very difficult to get people to appreciate the art in this, because somebody said, oh, it's like a cigar box label. Well, it's nothing like a cigar box label. And the best thing about the 6,000 tickets that went to a museum in India are the people in India get their culture back, and they'll know what those goddesses were. I mean, this is amazing, you know, a hand-colored tinted photograph that if that was an original photograph, you know, people would be freaking out just because it's a fabric label, you know, it's kind of dismissed. So this is the sad thing for me. I'm kind of a custodian of all these, but they should be in a museum, or they should be appreciated more. I mean, I can't even read this stuff. So the idea of this first Zoom was really to, you know, introduce you to this collections here and really sort of share with you the idea that it's here for anyone, really. Now I've got 3 minutes left on this one. So if you click the link at the top of the chat, if you're interested, we can do another 30 minutes. And I can also probably unmute everybody, and you can all shout at me.
What link? I have an iPad. What's the link look like?
If you look at the Zoom group chat, it says right, the first ever message on that Zoom group chat is a join Zoom meeting one. I'm gonna close this group now. And
oh no, I can't see it.
Let me post it again.
Hang on, if I go to the chat and do it, if it's on the chat, then that'll be good.
There you go, it says to everyone.
Minimize, raise hand, just, okay. So I hit chat.
Yeah, so.
And then
you should see
second link.
Yeah, which either of those links, they're both the same.
Okay.
Well, this is going to cut me off in about 2 minutes, and then I'll start that other one.
I may have to go in again. Oh, all right.
Oh, it says the remaining time's 8 minutes. Anyway, sorry for this. It is a bit angry, but so if you all guys want to unmute yourselves, and if you got any questions, Oh, Claire, for instance, you asked me about the American. Oh, flag on.
Well, I thought maybe originally before the Americans developed their own business making labels that you might have, the British companies may have sold the labels to the American market.
Yeah, I think because the trade was so huge, it was probably so efficient that they could probably ship the stuff to America cheaper than America could make it. That was, you know, the whole thing with. But these are all American printing blocks.
And where is this archives, this copyright archives that you talked about?
Oh, yeah, well, it's in Montclair, New Jersey. And really, the copyright thing is.
I thought you meant you have it. It's okay. I thought you meant that in Manchester there was some.
Oh no,
separate...
that one. No, that one is definitely that took me. It took me literally 30 years before I found that collection. And the thing is that collection is hidden because it's listed as the class of trademarks. And basically, Manchester was bombed during the Second World War. And I thought that maybe the collection had been destroyed, but it went to Cardiff and then it went off to the National Archives. Now, it's literally, there's some kind of microfiche, you know, technical search that you can do on the archives that I managed to track down what it was listed under, and it just says 186 volumes of class 24 marks. Now, in each of those 186 volumes, I mean, they're bigger than this. That's about 130,000 original, all different pieces of artwork from all around the world. And so I would have to guess that probably is the biggest collection of ethnic art that's just literally, you know, like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's just in a crate in some warehouse somewhere, which is the saddest thing that you know, and I understand, I totally agree with pulling down statues and all this kind of stuff. But there are amazing things that you can see from the past here that are maybe not even appropriate, that people don't want to talk about because it doesn't fit into their idea of, you know, colonialism and not, you know, respecting people that they'd invaded or whatever. And this, as I say, they didn't force people to buy fabric with a gun. You know, they literally, you know, yeah, look at these. It looks really colonial and terrible. But they're not all like this. Emperor of India, I mean, you're not allowed to even, you know, if I put that up, I'd get a load of stick for that, wouldn't it, really?
Wow.
So, you know, but if I put this up, then people also would be dismissive because it's Chinese art and go, whatever. And I've had Chinese people look at this stuff who've said it's really well painted. It's not some crappy version that was done by a guy in Manchester who didn't know what he was doing. This is all relating to religious fables, stories, and drawn in a way. I mean, I don't know if you can see that.
Yes.
You know. Oh, who's that? Somebody. You can see that's not shoddy workmanship. And there's literally, you know, I have 3,000 different ones of those. That, you know.
Wow.
So this, again, this should be in China in some archive where somebody can research it and scan it and say this is part of our history and how cool is that? Because some Chinese person would have drawn it and would have sent it to Manchester where those draftsmen at that textile thing, where at that printing company would have redrawn it exactly. And the same way that they would do, I mean, you know, here's a book. You know, they had no idea what this said. They just copied it identically. Or maybe they had a Chinese artist there. But this stuff is, you know, they're not going to make mistakes. So, and this is every culture in the world, you know, Africa, India, China. So this is what I mean when somebody says, oh, they're just, you know, cigar box labels. No, they're not. So
they're much more than that.
And so
it went overseas and then came all the way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's this idea that, you know, before the internet, you know, before the telegram even, there was this interchange of cultures. And okay, so the museum in Manchester, the City Art Gallery in Manchester, there was a famous guy called Adolf Villette, who worked with Lowry, etc. And, you know, I told them about my collection, and they said, well, do you have any by Villette? Because he worked at a textile, you know, he worked at one of the label design companies as an artist for a year. And they were only interested if it was Adolf Villette. And, as you know, that's the other sad thing, this snobbery or historical thing of basically dismissing things that are in, you know, this is industrial art to people. You know, of course, I've not got original art for all this stuff. The original art's worth more than the, you know, than the actual print. But to me, it's the same thing. It's like saying a digitized version of, that you see on a walkthrough of a museum isn't as good as a painting. Of course not. But if that's all there is, because you can't see it any other way, hey, why lose a piece of artwork? You know. So somebody messaged me and said, oh, I work at a toweling mill in Ashton-under-Lyne. Do you have anything toweling? And I was like, oh yeah, I have this. There you go. There's an original, you know, little illustration, original drawing for a towel. I mean, that's not, obviously, some amazing piece of artwork, but that's history as well. It might be from the 50s or the 60s. But, you know, Claire, who's the librarian, will tell you, you know, history is history. It doesn't stop at a point because it's not cool anymore. So
it's a great piece of packaging.
Yeah. So the sad thing is, it's almost, the other thing is people who've come to their house, you know, I mean, it's just, I just open cupboards and there's more and more of this stuff. That's the original stamp maker's sign from Manchester, from the last stamp making company. You know, to me, it's amazing to have all this, you know, supporting evidence. But what it also does is becomes overwhelming. You know, where do you start? Do you start on the typography? You start on the art history? You start with Indian art or Japanese art or whatever. And it does become overwhelming.